Hi, welcome to our show, the Fit and Healthy Show. And today we are going to be talking about acid versus alkali, or alkali versus acid diets. Of all the topics I've talked about in the last year, this applies to everybody. And I wish everybody could watch the show because they could make their lives so much better, prevent illnesses and diseases, have energy, weight loss, the list goes on and on. So for those of you that are joining, you're lucky because you're going to learn a lot today and hopefully life-changing information that you'll listen to. When we talk about acid or alkali, there are pH scales, and your chemistry teacher is going, "Yeah, should have listened in my class," because this pH scale is very, very important to understand acid and alkalinity. The lower the pH, the more acidic. The higher the pH, the more alkali. And on most litmus paper scales or most science scales, we see a 1 to 14. Some scientists use a 1 to 7, with the median being 3.5, from math again here, if you're on that 1 to 7 scale, and then 7 being what we call the neutral scale on a 1 to 14. You need that information because it's kind of important, not trying to get too technical. But as you look up various foods online and so on and so forth, and you see what numbers they give for the various, whether they're acid-producing or alkali-producing types of foods, you need to have that information. Now, an acid-forming food, and once again, here's a little bit of our chemistry, is a hydrogen-positive ion that produces a decreased ability for the body to energize itself. It brings you down, okay? Now, in order to increase the body's ability to energize itself, the OH negative ions, which is an oxygen, hydrogen ion, and a negative, because we only have one oxygen to one hydrogen, produces and runs on a higher, from the 7 pH to the 14 pH, the alkali scale. Then our body runs generally, we have very small parameters and about a 7.35 alkalinity on the alkali side on our pH. So what that means is the foods that we ingest need to be on the alkali side. And some things are more acid and some things are more alkali, so depending on what you're eating is how you have to kind of balance this diet. There's a very good rule of thumb that I've come across in all the research I've done throughout the years on this subject, is if you eat 80% of your foods from an alkali source and 20% from an acidic source, you're going to be very healthy, you're going to function well, you're not going to have all the diseases and issues that go along with being acidic. Now, mind you, if you're very physically active or you live in the Mojave Desert or you're back in Iraq, your body will require 90 to 95% of your foods be an alkali-based. So for those of us who are grabbing the cheeseburger with the fries and the soda, we're done because we've acidified our bodies so significantly that obviously, remember how I told you when you're acid, your energy level, body's ability to produce energy just goes down to the ground, okay? So, for me personally, when I alkali my blood and I eat alkali foods, my energy levels, who needs caffeine? Seriously, you don't need caffeine because your energy levels will be so good and you'll pull from your good enzyme-rich alkaline-producing foods, you're going to feel terrific. Now, we have what are called alkaline reserves. I'm trying to make this as basic as I can because I know not everybody is a rocket scientist out of Vandenberg. But alkalines act as buffers to maintain the proper pH in the blood, alkali-producing foods. So, since we need to run that 80-20 ratio, we have to eat the type of foods that will generate more alkalinity within the body. All of our organs require an alkali environment, particularly the main one that sits right here a little bit slightly off to the left, the heart. And if the heart isn't an acidic, if you're eating tons of whatever it is, it's acidic, French fries, artificial sweeteners, you're all stressed out, you're tons of meat, no vegetables or fruit, your heart, they don't like it. And the energy levels in the heart fall. It can lend itself to irregular heartbeats. It can lend itself to all kinds of diseases of the heart. And in addition, it opens you up to viral attacks from like a simple common cold virus into the heart. So, the liver performs over 500 different functions in the body. The liver requires an alkali state in order to neutralize all those toxins from wherever we're getting them in our environment, be it from pumping the gas, smoking a cigarette, clinging with the comet, whatever it is. Our liver has to process all this, and if it's in an acidic state, it can't do it. So that means all those toxins damage the liver. So once again, if you alkali, the body can better handle all of those types of toxic or chemical exposures. I could go through all the other organs that require, well, like I said, all the organs require alkalinity. But pancreatic cancers, stomach cancers, bowel cancers, all of these types of Crohn's disease, all of these lend itself to the body being very, very acidic and inflamed. Okay, we're going to get to the how to get your body alkaline here in a few minutes, but I got to get you some background here so you kind of know all the bad stuff, and then we'll give you the good stuff. One of the key things that we kind of think of is, oh, I got excessive stomach acids. I hear this all the time. My stomach's got a lot of acid in it, you know. Oh, gosh, give me a Prilosec. Give me something to reduce the stomach acid. And so your doc, he complies, and he gives you a Prilosec or Prevacid or something to reduce the stomach acids without realizing that when he does that, there's a stomach acid in the stomach that actually reduces the acids and makes you more alkali. It's called betaine hydrochloride. So if you take those types of drugs, you suppress those types of stomach acids that digest your food and keep them from fermenting and becoming toxic and coming back up again and causing damage to your esophagus. So before you go on any of these acid suppressors, diet changes, adding maybe a little betaine hydrochloride. It can come in supplemental forms, 250, 300 milligrams, maybe with some plant enzymes. See if maybe that doesn't resolve the issue. Those with hiatal hernias, there's a little valve here that closes. It can pinch. There's a nerve down here that it can pinch those little hernias, and it kind of singes it off. That prevents you from producing this hydrochloric acid. When that happens, then once again, you can't digest your food. It comes back up again. Doc gives you an acid suppressor, and by God, you don't digest any of your food. All the nutrients, all the everything go right through you. So remember, very, very important, consider changing the diet more to an alkali-based, adding in some betaine hydrochloride before you start adding those drugs in. I threw that in, very, very important to know, because I have so many of my customers that are on these acid redox drugs. Now, this betaine hydrochloride that we take these acid redox drugs for, guess what it is? It's our first line of defense against microbes. Viruses, fungals, bacterias, cancers. So what happens when we neutralize those? Then we get viruses, fungals, bacterias, cancers, name it. Okay, very important that you understand that. If you need a copy of these as well, these notes, you can come into any of the vitamin and herb stores and grab them. We carry them at our store, and we can give you a photocopy. Now, the solution. I always like the solutions. Alkaline foods. You can go online, punch in alkaline diet, and you'll come up with a lot of different, you can Google it, and you'll come up with a lot of different sites that you can look at to get a list of alkali-producing foods. There are books on the market, Alkali or Die. That was one of my favorite reference materials. Because seriously, when he says alkali or die, he's right. He's absolutely right. If you don't alkali your diet, you will die early in a very slow, painful way. Bottom line, that's the way it works. So alkaline, long life, less pain. Here we go. Books with alkali lists, go online. Things that are alkali. Most of your fruits and vegetables, other than berries and plums, and they have antioxidants to them, and remember I told you that 80-20 ratio? You want some of those berries and plums and a few prunes and things like that that are acidic. But once again, we want primarily most of our fruits and vegetables to come from alkali sources. Most sprouted grains are alkali. You pull out that little $1.50 loaf bread that can smush into a ball, and you're talking about a pH that's a number 1 or 2 on the acidic level. And then you throw on peanut butter or a meat sandwich on top of that, you got pure acids. So look for the whole grains, the sprouted grains. There's Ezekiel breads. It should say on it sprouted grain breads, sprouted grains. Those are alkali forming types of grains. Kind of like the ones that they used to use about 100 years ago. They were all sprouted. There were very little processing to them. So all refined flours, sugars, pastas, those kinds of things that are refined, not sprouted, are very, very acidic. So if you're sitting there with your platter full of spaghetti with the meat sauce on it, good luck. You're going to be acidic. Your body is going to hurt all of the time because acid. That's what happens. Acid in the joints, acids in the vascular system, acid in the organs. I can tell you, if you alkali your diet for 3 days, just 3 days, you'll notice a complete shift in how your body feels. As far as it functions, how much it hurts, how much energy level you have, your immune system, critical and vital. Okay? All meat is acid. I don't care whether you say I eat a lot of chicken and I eat a lot of fish. It's a little less acidic, like a number 3, 2 on the scale of 14. Beef, pork, a 1 or a 2. If you eat tons and tons of red meat without eating tons of vegetables, tons of alkali-producing other types of foods, you're going to be acidic. One of the first things I see at the kidney dialysis center that the doctors tell people to do, because the kidneys get very acidic, obviously, when you're on dialysis, no red meat. Gone, history. Because it's a very poor biologically available protein, and it's very acidic on the kidneys. So, keep it to a minimum as much as you possibly can. Cheeses and eggs are neutral. Pretty good sources of protein, as long as you're not allergic to milk and eggs, you're good. Pretty neutral in pH. Keep those in mind. Those are good sources of proteins. Beans, depending on the kind of beans, can be fairly neutral as well. So if you're like my husband and you like, pinto beans, you're talking about a neutral pH, and they're very high in protein as well. Alcohol and coffee. Now, I know coffee has a lot of benefits as far as antioxidant abilities, but if you're acidic and you throw on lots of coffee or alcohol, you're going to hurt. Coffee has a pH of 1. 1, and then you add that sugar in there and you continue to keep it at 1. So it's very acidic producing. So, keep it under control in that regard, unless you're like the Italians and you're sitting there and you're eating vegetables all day long. They can eat or drink their coffee. Or I have customers who like their 3 or 4 cups in the morning, and they're vegetarians and they eat a lot of vegetables. They don't have any problems. So the key is that balance in that regard. Pesticides. Most of our 7,000 chemicals that we spray all over our food here in the United States are acidic. They produce acids. As a matter of fact, artificial sweeteners are the most acidic thing that you can eat or drink, as such, if you eat diet sodas or drink diet sodas. So, keeping in mind the most acidic things are white sugar, flour, pasta, starches, meats, alcohol, and coffee to some extent, and artificial sweeteners. You got to reduce those down. You just got to reduce those down or balance them with alkalis. We talked about and touched upon this a little earlier, but all naughty viruses, bad viruses, funguses, bacteria in the body can only survive in an acidic environment. They cannot live in an alkali environment. So when I see people coming in with chronic sickness, chronic illnesses, chronic, and whether it's caused by their diet or the most acidic causing thing that you potentially could ever have is stress. Stress, anger, negativity, all those kinds of things produce in the body acid acid, acid. As a matter of fact, there are scales out there, and I've seen them in my psychology books from college and other reading literature that talks about, it's called a social reading scale. And for example, they'll list on there the most stressful thing you can go through, for example, would be a death of a spouse or moving or all this. But they rank them in different and give them number assignments, and then you add them all up. And those literally have been found to be able to tell you what your risk of developing a disease will be. Primarily because when you're under extreme amounts of stress, you're extremely acidic. So when you're extremely acidic, guess what? In creeps the viruses, the fungals, the bacteria. I have 3 women that I consider friends right now who are going through either taking care of an elderly family member or divorces who all were healthy, who all came down with cancer in the last year. And they all had pretty good diets and everything else, but boy, that stress made them so acidic, down they went. So, get the stress down. Exercise, do whatever you can to get the stress down. The most alkali-producing thing that you can do, where is it at on here? I don't even have it on here, and it's the most important thing. Prayer, meditation, being at peace, accepting circumstances. Those are all really important states of being. And I know this isn't a spiritual class, but I can tell you from a measurable scientific standpoint that if you're calm and you handle things and you pray or do whatever it is that you do that brings you back into that peaceful state, you will be more alkali. Because I have this wonderful chart at the store that I give out to people to try and get them to alkali their bodies. And that's the number 1 alkali producing thing is prayer, peace, meditation. Okay, so alkali the diet. Get the body in balance within whatever you can to get that stress gone. Okay? There are other modalities and other things that also increase alkalinity. Now, I know we're all concerned about getting excessive sun. However, we've kind of found out we actually got to have some sun. So, a minimum of a half hour of sunlight a day. It doesn't have to be all at the same time. But you got to have the sunlight in order to have alkali-producing reserves. You have to have it. Survival. Just survival. Most alternative treatments, including light massage, reflexology, acupuncture, herbal medicines, are alkali producing. Once again, doctors can scream and shout, it's just science, they're measurable. They're alkali producing. Most medicines are acidic producing in the body. Measurable. Okay? So, keeping that in mind, judicious use of medication. Lots of studies done on music. Studies done on music with calming ADHD kids, getting people to relax, getting more work out of them because you play soft music over the phones in the office, whatever it be. Harmonic music, not just classical, can be some of your good Lordy or anything that's harmonically soothing to the body. You know, the old classic rock, 99.1, I love it. Harmonics. But you throw in some of that music that your 16-year-old is playing in the house that is so disjointed and non-harmonic, literally can cause extreme amounts of acidity and stress. So keep in mind, headphones on, even though you're maybe working out or whatever, keep it harmonic by the types of music, and hopefully you understand what I mean by that. Colors. Colors that make you feel good. And it doesn't have to be a color that mom says makes her feel good or dad says. It's whatever makes you feel good. So if you go to your closet and you say, oh yeah, I feel like yellow today, follow those instincts. Colors do affect our mood. I mean, they've done research like, blue is very settling in babies' rooms and things like that. Yeah, those colors do work. But wear colors that make you feel good for that particular day. Not always choosing black or not always choosing white, but choosing some color to add in there. That can lift mood, make you feel better. Gosh, I hope that this gives you an idea. Alkali or die, bottom line. statement of fact. Research, go online, get more information. We're going to be moving on now to the research portion of our show. Thank you very much. Hi, welcome back to the research portion of our show, and with us today is Ralph Turchiano. Ralph?
Thank you for that intro. And coming out of University of Illinois, something our ancestors and grandparents have probably known for quite some time, especially when it comes to our children. Well, recently the University of Illinois did a study between 9 and 12-year-old kids. They discovered something simple. Physical activity improved test scores. And it wasn't necessarily a lot of physical activity. They were just looking for 20 minutes a day. Basically, probably about 1/3 of old PE classes used to be. In their area, they showed physical activity increased attention and academic achievement significantly, by far. And again, just 20 minutes. I mean, come on, schools. I understand there's a lot going on, but just to have the kids walk around the building. This was walking, not playing basketball, not kicking the ball. That's all it took to make tremendous differences in their test grades. Something that just came out of University of Illinois, which you should pay attention to. After that, vegans. Well, when it comes to bone density, they discovered something very interesting. What happened? This is on the online issue of the Osteoporosis International. They look at vegan Buddhist nuns. And this was important because their calcium intake was phenomenally low, only about 370 milligrams of calcium per day, even though our RDA is usually 1,000 milligrams. On top of that, their protein intake was only about 35 grams. What did they discover when it came to bone density? It was the same as anyone else's. There was no change between your typical meat-eating, more well-rounded diets per se than basically the vegan Buddhist nuns. Now, this could play a large role in the acid-alkalinity balance too. The fact that their diets are very alkaline, the drain on the calcium needs of the body may play a huge role. But it's important for people like myself also. Being a vegetarian, the only meat product I consume is dairy, and so far I've been doing pretty okay in my own opinion. After that, let's go to autistic children. Now, remember our last issue, our last show we showed, autistic kids seem to improve with a fever. So it looks like a lot of interesting information is coming out in regards to autism. Well, this one came out with a simple over-the-counter supplement called melatonin. They discovered this, and I always want to read, this came in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine. I always want to make sure we give the source. They discovered this. When autistic children, which were given melatonin, and the reason they did this is because autistic kids usually sometimes take up to 2 hours to fall asleep, and it's very problematic. They discovered when simple over-the-counter melatonin was given, they slept 21 minutes longer, which doesn't seem like a lot. They basically took 28 less minutes to fall asleep, and on top of that, fell asleep 42 minutes earlier than normal. And this was only after, not 6 months, not 3 months, this was only after 2 weeks of melatonin supplementation. And the children that they were given the ages, this melatonin to I should say, were between the ages of 2 and 12 years of age. So obviously they may have deemed it fairly safe for toddlers, at least in regards to that age range. I always recommend if you try melatonin, you just start with the lowest dose possible because each person responds to it a little differently. And after that, now comes to diet. There's an interesting science called epigenetics. And this is what this looks at, basically, is the diet of the mother, especially while the baby is developing in the womb. Well, they discovered something very disturbing, at least in regards to mice to start. They discovered that if you are missing nutrients or key nutrients in your diet while a child is developing, you will, not maybe, you will make permanent genetic alterations to that child. On top of that, these genetic alterations will be passed down generational. So it will just continue to go on and on and on. What I mean by genetic damage, according to, again, the University of Utah, diabetes, growth retardation, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and neurodevelopment delays. What they discovered, especially when the diets were poor, and I mean poor by missing nutrients, is that it tended to, let's just back this up and use their quote, they found that the lack of nutrients caused the gene responsible for something called insulin growth factor 1. Many of you may not know what that is. In the nutrition industry, it's very important. Insulin growth factor 1 to be significantly reduced the amount of that IGF-1 that was actually produced in the body before and after birth. A lot of people that are into anti-aging things and things along those lines all know what insulin growth factor 1 is. It's real important, but it's greatly marginalized in people with poor diets. So again, and they said, quote, but also that prenatal care is far more important than anyone could have imagined a decade ago. Doesn't take a lot to do a lot. It takes just a little bit to mess up a heck of a lot. So eat well. Don't eat a lot, but eat balanced. All right. Oral contraceptives. They discovered something interesting. The estradiol, which is part of the oral contraceptives, especially Generation 1 and Generation 2, directly was related to lupus. Directly related. They just did not realize how significantly related it actually was. This is especially for autoimmune diseases such as and the like. This was in the April issue of Arthritis Care and Research. They looked at women across Britain, 1.7 million women between the ages of 18 and 45, and noticed a dramatic jump in SLE lupus to those people taking oral contraceptives, because they know that that estradiol that was in there directly affects the immune system, and obviously not necessarily in the best way. Something to keep in mind. And now that we know food affects genetics, we also discover that drugs do, especially one known as Depakote or valproate. What they discovered is mothers that were taking Depakote, the children born to these mothers of these anti-seizure medications, especially Depakote, the children born averaged an IQ of 92. Other epileptic medications, on average, about 100, but they conveniently left off what the average IQ of the U.S. citizen is normally, so you don't have a benchmark. The average IQ of the U.S. citizen is 106. The children being born to the individuals on Depakote are coming out 92 on the average of the IQ. And let's go to prescription drug prices. Well, they're raising fast in inflation as usual, about 8.7% per year. The main culprits in these prescription drug price increases, well, Prevacid, 30% increase. Wellbutrin, 21% increase. Lunesta, 20% increase. Why? And quote, because they wanted to boost the profits. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you got something out of that.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Always very interesting. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for joining the Fit and Healthy Show. Once again, we encourage you to research the information that we provide you. Take care of your health. Thanks a lot.